What role does the government have to accept in ruining people's Christmases?
Oh, well, this is just the most disappointing news, actually, the fact that we've got these strikes going on. They're going on over Christmas. People are trying to see their families. You know, we don't get that much time to all come together. And so it's really, really disappointing. I mean, obviously, this is, you know, between the unions and the paymasters. We have actually accepted in full all of the recommendations from the independent bodies. And, you know, I do understand, I mean, I think all of us understand that inflation is high and it's, you know, we've got this spike due to, you know, obviously external factors in the war in Ukraine. But you can't spend your way out of inflation. And what we're trying to do is get that balance. And we've accepted all the recommendations and we've urged, you know, people not to strike. But, yeah, it's very disappointing that Border Force will be striking over Christmas.
We can't get on a train, we can't fly, there'll be problems on the roads. What are you going to do about it?
Well, we are doing our best to mitigate as far as possible. So in the case of Border Force, we've got 2,000 military personnel who are trained, who are going to try and mitigate, to try and help with some of those roles at the border. But, you know, we do expect there will be disruption and delays, but they will do their best. And they're also helping with the health service as well.
Rishi Sunak said yesterday he would do what he needs to do in order to keep people safe. What did he mean?
To keep people safe in regard to...
Well, I'm guessing he was suggesting that he would bring in emergency measures so that emergency services couldn't go on strike.
Well, we have got some emergency measures which have been introduced to Parliament, and I think they're looking at you know, what we need to do there. But yes, that has been mentioned, and we will. He said he will put legislation in place, so I expect that will continue to be brought forward. Yeah.
OK, so emergency workers should not be allowed to strike.
Well, I don't know what the extent of I mean, some people are not allowed to strike. I mean, you know, there are some contracts which, you know, say people can't strike. I mean, the military can't go on strike, for example, and they're the people who obviously are helping us in a last resort. But they
is it fair that squaddies who earn significantly less than people who are going on strike should be asked or expected to fill in?
Well, I think we should be extremely grateful for them for doing that, because I think they've accepted a pay settlement which I think is less and lower than some of the others as well.
Yeah, I mean, how much sympathy do you have for people though? Like we've talked previously about nurses using food banks, firemen are using food banks as well. We were told by their union this week. The pay review bodies came up with their figures, but that was before inflation was running at 11%.
Yes, and you know, inflation is affecting every single person, not just in this country, actually, in many, many other countries. I mean, the OBR, obviously, the most important thing is you can't spend your way out of inflation, is to try and navigate so that you can bring inflation down. If inflation is high, everybody feels poorer. And that's what we're trying to avoid, to make that as short as possible. Because you can't just spend your way out of that. If we continue to do that, then we'll have inflation with us all for a lot longer. So it's really critical. And the OBR, I think, saw inflation starting to fall by, you know, sort of next year, the early part of next year. And all the things we put in place, you know, the energy relief scheme, etc.
People still can't heat their homes.
Well, that's why we've got the energy relief bill in place. That was £55 billion worth of support just for heating. So we are trying our best to get that balance. You know,
but we're on the verge of a general strike. I mean, there's only one day throughout the rest of December that there isn't a strike in this country. We are on the verge of a general strike, and coordinated action by unions, we can just look at that as we're chatting, coordinated action by unions can bring down governments.
Well, I mean, that has happened in history, for sure. And
You're not worried about that?
You know, you can only do what you can do to try and control this. You know, you've got two options, haven't you? You've either got the option of trying to make a fair and balanced approach, because, of course, you know, if we accepted all of the pay demands, I think it's £28 billion that taxpayers would have to pay. You know, that's not government money, that's the other taxpayers. So, you know, what we're trying to do is get this fair and balanced approach. Now, you know, in terms of the public sector, I know teachers are balloting at the moment, you know, that 5% for an experienced teacher, which is on the bands, by the way. If you move up the bands, then that can be more than that, and 8.9% for a new teacher. So those are on the starting salaries, and we've raised the starting salaries. yes, it's not matching inflation completely, but inflation will go down before the end of that year's period if we stick to our course and try to, take sensible measures as we outlined in the budget.
This government's on the precipice of a general strike.
Well, I mean, the reality is we have a number of people who are striking, and it's really disappointing. We have to pull together as a country. We've been through an awful lot. We've been through the pandemic. We're now supporting Ukraine in their war against Russia. These impacts, these are all things that are happening in every country, and they're not specific to our government at all. All we can do is try to react to them in a fair and balanced way. We have accepted all of the pay recommendations. They are not at inflation levels, but they are, reasonable, and they're highest. And the teachers' pay rise is the highest in 30 years that we're recommending, that we're agreeing
and inflation is the highest in 40 years.
Yes, it is, but you can't spend your way out of inflation. This is a really simple message. If you continue to spend your way out of inflation, it'll last for longer and it'll impact everybody for longer. And that is where you get into these spirals. You can't get into a spiral. We have to take a sensible, balanced approach. We have to navigate the country through this. It's really disappointing that people are striking, and it's really disappointing they're striking at Christmas. We've missed. The last 2 or 3 Christmases have been completely disrupted due to the pandemic. People want to get together with their families. We don't get a lot of time off. This is a great time. We all try and catch up, and everybody's plans are being disrupted. Lots of us are interconnected. Lots of us have, our eldest is in France. Lots of people have people abroad and rely on the transport, public transport, to get to see them.
I know you're here to talk about funding for universities and colleges today. There is concern that primary schools are struggling, though, also to pay their energy bills when they need to keep those classrooms warm because of fears over strep A.
Well, that's why on Monday this week, or Monday or Tuesday, I think you had Nick Gibb on, and we put in place 500 million just for short-term energy efficiencies within our schools. So every school has got an allocation, which they'll get very quickly to do things like lagging, insulation, heating controls, LED lighting, things that will help them keep their bills down. Obviously, they also have the energy relief scheme, and we had £2 billion extra this year and next year for schools. They haven't had that money yet, but they'll be getting that. They'll find out their exact proportion of that they'll get by the end of the year, and they'll get it in April. So there is help. It is on the way, and we are working very much. And if anybody is particularly struggling, then they should get in touch with the department, because we do have people who will come and help you work through how you get those efficiencies in place.
A couple of very short questions, if I may. Apparently, the Albanian ambassador was speaking yesterday to the House of Commons committee, one of them saying that Albanian children are being bullied in their schools because of a campaign of discrimination by the Home Secretary. Will you speak to her about the language that she uses?
Oh, I haven't seen that. But, bullying in schools, we completely are against any bullying in schools. And, that isn't acceptable for anybody. I hadn't heard that report, but I will look back in the department and see if we've had any reports of that. But bullying is wrong anyway, for anybody, for any, whether it's where they come from or the colour of their skin or whether they're a girl or a boy, it's completely unacceptable.
OK. Will you miss Matt Hancock?
Yeah, I was his PPS for a while, and I have worked with him in the health department. By the time I guess he goes, he'll have done about 14 years of service, so I guess he's decided. I think it was pretty clear when he went off to the jungle that he was probably thinking of a different career.
Doesn't look as though it was completely his choice, though, does it? It looks as though he would have been deselected anyway.
Well, I don't think anyone forced him to go to the jungle. I think that was his choice.
Yeah, no, I meant stepping down.
Well, I think there's... it was clear to me, I think I said at the time, that indicated to me that he was perhaps looking to, take on a different career path, one maybe more like yours, I don't know.
Keep your mitts off, Matt Hancock. It's good to see you as always. Thanks very much.
Thank you.